Jelly Roll has been more than just a #1 performer for years. He has represented survival. His path from jail cells to the Grammy stage is reminiscent of a screenplay. Heartfelt, gritty, and unvarnished. But when the burden becomes too great, even the strongest voices can break. Additionally, Jelly Roll has been bearing a burden that is much darker than anyone could have predicted behind closed doors. The country rap artist has been deeply upset by recent events, according to people close to him. Jelly Roll was silently battling a personal crisis that jeopardized not just his career but also his health, relationships, and even his will to continue, as fans applauded his sold-out gigs and welcomed his mainstream breakthrough. It wasn't a public outburst or a tabloid scandal. It spoke to the very struggles he has always sang about: addiction, anxiety, and the lingering ghosts of trauma that never quite go away, and it was something more profound and relatable. He has alluded to the return of his dark days in interviews, but until now, no one realized how close he truly came to the edge. According to insiders, it began with minor adjustments, such as missed calls, postponed appointments, and a detached expression in his eyes, but then the pivotal moment arrived. Private crisis that made him face everything he believed he had overcome. An emotional moment that made everyone around him fear the worst. Nevertheless, he continued to act as usual. For his fans, put on a brave front. However, the mask is beginning to come off. We'll be delving into the heartbreaking information Jelly Roll never intended to reveal in the next seconds. The reality of what's been happening behind the spotlight, the tour trips, and the music. And one question hangs in the air like smoke as the whole picture comes to light. This fall, will the man who climbed out of the abyss live? Before the dazzling lights and Billboard charts, before the sold-out arenas and emotional award shows, he was just Jason Default, a young man from Nashville, Tennessee's Antioch neighborhood, where dreams were rarely realized. And it was uncommon to provide second chances. Jason was born on December 4, 1984, and had a difficult childhood. He was raised in a working-class household by a father who sold meat out of a truck to earn money and a mother who struggled with addiction and mental health concerns. His surroundings were harsh, erratic, and frequently merciless. A young Jason, however, found odd solace in music somewhere amongst that mayhem. Particularly the truth-telling sort. His haven was rap music. He was attracted to musicians who made anthems out of their scars, such as Tupac and 3 6 Mafia, who wore their suffering like armor. However, the streets were calling even as he began to write poems and dream of something more. Jason had sunk into a life that resembled the ones in the songs he listened to as a youngster. Criminal activity and incarceration. He got detained for the first time at the age of 14. He was in and out of juvenile jail by the age of 16, and shortly after, he was charged with a felony that would follow him for years. Something inside of him refused to silently vanish, even though for many it would have been the end of the path, a one-way ticket to nowhere. Jason started honing his writing while incarcerated. Writing lyrics in detention cells and fantasizing of a stage he had never seen before, he poured his feelings into verses. It was survival, not only therapy. And after he eventually left, he adopted the moniker Jelly Roll, which his mother had given him when he was a fat child, and turned it into a kind of ruthless candor. He started using his car's trunk to sell mixtapes, participating in underground performances and working with other rappers from the South. It was a tremendous grind. Just unadulterated skill and an unwavering will, no managers, no budget. Addiction, poverty, shattered households, and salvation were all themes in his music. As experienced experiences rather than as abstract concepts. And gradually, others began to take notice. But it took time to achieve success. For many years, the general public disregarded Jelly Roll as just another underground performer. His heavily tattooed, set, and frequently emotional visage didn't match pop culture's polished ideal. But that's what made him authentic, and that's why his fan base became so devoted. They were living his songs, not simply listening to them. Jelly Roll's life was also changing behind the scenes. The experience of being a father at a young age altered him more than any successful song ever could. When everything else seemed to be crumbling, his daughter Bailey became the fulcrum of his storm, keeping him going. He later met Bunny So, a model and podcaster who became his wife and pillar, encouraging him to believe in love once more and supporting him during his darkest hours. His world revolved around his family. Jelly Roll made sure his audience understood his priorities, his wife, his children, and the desire to leave a better legacy than the one he came from, even as he was touring and making a reputation for himself. The demons, however, never completely vanished. He has been candid about his continuous struggles with addiction and mental health, admitting that although his notoriety has increased, the suffering has not gone away on its own. Neither he nor anybody else anticipated his climb to fame in country music. However, it clicked when he stepped into the genre and combined his honest lyrics with twangy melodies and moving narratives. Jelly Roll was suddenly found by a completely new audience, who saw in him not just an artist but also a man who had endured the kind of suffering that most people avoid. The paradox that existed inside him, the tug-of-war between faith and failure, between redemption and relapse, was encapsulated in his breakthrough hit, Son of a Sinner. He gained accolades, TV appearances, and even an emotional Grand Ole Opry debut as a result of the song, which launched him into a new stratosphere. It was a full-circle experience for the Antioch child, bringing silence to a room full of tales and tears to his eyes. But the burden of his history never left his shoulders, despite the rise of his star. Jelly Roll has frequently stated that his goals are to have an impact and serve as a voice for broken people, letting them know they are not alone, rather than to become famous. And even while that aim is admirable, it has a cost. The strain has grown behind the scenes. Every achievement came with increased accountability, higher standards, and more evenings spent gazing at the ceiling and questioning whether he was good enough. And those cracks have only started to show. The burden Jelly Roll has been bearing his history, present, and role as a husband, parent, and public personality, according to family insiders and lifelong colleagues. These factors are starting to catch up with him. Emotional stress behind closed doors, a silent health crisis, and whispered burnout fears have all contributed to the tempest brewing under the surface. He continues to give his all for his fans and to smile for the cameras. However, those closest to him claim that something has changed. He's withdrawing further, thinking more deeply, and questioning whether he can really escape the suffering he's been singing about for decades. And Jelly Roll can be found there now. In addition to being a musician, he is also a guy torn between the life he has created and the one he fled. A husband. A dad. A warrior, and maybe more than ever, a spirit seeking tranquility in a world that keeps dragging him back into the flames. His story has yet to be told, but one thing is certain, the fight is far from finished, and the upcoming chapter may prove to be the most pivotal one to far. Whispers had been circulating in Jelly Roll's camp for months, but they came from people closest to him rather than from blogs or tabloids. His family, his tour staff, and even his wife, Bunny Jo, had started to see the warning signs, the restless nights, the growing exhaustion, and the times when he appeared aloof on stage, not from the music, but from himself. There was a problem. Then, just hours before a big performance, he had a private medical problem that sent shockwaves through his inner circle. Insiders claim that just before he left his dressing room to welcome a crowded crowd, Jelly Roll passed out. One moment the room was silent, the next there was a flurry of activity. His blood pressure had risen, he was pale, trembling, and having trouble breathing when EMTs were called. Fans initially believed it was tiredness and that he had been overburdened by the tour schedule, but insiders knew otherwise. This was a warning sign, not merely weariness. What his intellect had been too arrogant to utter out was being screamed by his body. He was exhausted. The doctors recommended rest right away, a complete halt to touring, and a thorough examination of his general health. Ever the fighter, Jelly Roll resisted. Fans were waiting, dates were set, and he felt he couldn't abandon his commitments. It felt like a betrayal to cancel shows. And because he understands what it's like to be abandoned, Jelly Roll has always made an effort to never fail his people. Behind closed doors, however, the truth was indisputable. They had suffered from years of mental health struggles, emotional stress, and physical hardship. After overcoming addiction, the man now had to deal with a different kind of beast. The constant strain of secretly disintegrating himself while maintaining the strength of everyone else. In addition to the breakdown, there were other warning signs, such as a missed podcast appearance with Bunny, which is uncommon for a couple that is so open and united, a sudden pause from social media, and a series of interviews that were postponed without providing a clear explanation. Fans started to notice that the man who used to share his innermost thoughts online had stopped doing so. Then, in a silent, late-night livestream rather than in a news release or a dramatic headline, the confession was made. Speaking to his supporters like a guy in suffering rather than a celebrity, Jelly Roll's face was barely illuminated by a faint lamp. Too long. He continued by discussing the strain of performing while battling panic and anxiety episodes. He acknowledged that he had relapsed into bad habits, not s, but emotional eating, loneliness, and pushing himself to the maximum until his body failed. His humility, not only his honesty, was what gave the occasion such impact. The guy who had stared down addiction in prison walls, Jelly Roll, was now acknowledging something maybe much more difficult, that he was a human being in need of assistance. Fans came together in support of him in the days that followed. The internet was flooded with messages of love, support, and understanding. In her own article, his wife Bunny reminded everyone that being strong isn't about always being alright. It all comes down to understanding when to take a break, recover, and provide grace. Even his most devoted supporters were shaken by the deeper truth that surfaced as the dust settled. Physicians had determined that if Jelly Roll didn't make a change, he was seriously at risk of experiencing long-term health issues. Recent testing had revealed warning symptoms of heart strain, high blood pressure, and chronic stress. Unchecked problems like this have the potential to take a life too soon. A choice was presented to him. Take a break and deal with these problems right away, or else you might not live to see the legacy he began completed. It served as an unavoidable wake-up call. Jelly Roll quietly started to rearrange things. He canceled a number of forthcoming performances. He turned his attention to getting better. In terms of his physical, mental, and spiritual well-being, he resumed his therapy sessions, worked with a trainer, and resumed the spiritual activities he had stopped during the rush of achievement. More significantly, he began to open up about the worries he had suppressed for years by speaking openly with his daughter, Bunny, and family. The truth is that suffering never truly goes away, it only seeks new hiding spots. Although longtime fans are aware that this isn't the first storm he has faced, this one feels unique. This is about choosing to live completely, even when you feel like you're breaking, not about recovering from failure. And for that reason, this chapter is so potent. The underdog who prevailed is no longer Jelly Roll. He is the man at the top, gazing back at the shadows and making the conscious decision to move onward. Even though it was painful, this moment can turn out to be the most important one in his life. Not because of the actual situation, but rather because of his subsequent actions. Will he come back stronger, more determined, more purposeful? Will he finally take charge of his health and prioritize himself? Or will he be dragged back into the routine that nearly brought everything to an end by the weight of expectations? Nobody is certain. However, one thing is evident. The tale of Jelly Roll is not yet complete. Line by line, heartbreak by heartbreak, victory by victory, it is constantly being written. If we've learned anything from this chapter, it's that even our heroes require mending. As fans, our only option is to wait and hope that when he performs again, it will be not only for us but also because he genuinely wants to be there, entire, healthy, and prepared to start over. Jelly Roll's greatest accomplishment, despite all the heartbreak, searing songs, and sold-out arenas, may not be on a Billboard chart but rather in the subtle ways he has impacted people's lives. Beyond the stage, because beneath the tattoos and the tumultuous history lies a guy who has established a legacy based on service as much as achievement. Jelly Roll has utilized his position over the years to raise awareness of the underprivileged, the jailed, the addicted, and the heartbroken, not for selfish ends. In addition to singing about salvation, he has also lived it and helped others escape the flames. He made one of his most significant contributions when he went back to the Nashville juvenile prison facility where he had been housed as a teenager. This time, however, he entered as a mentor rather than an inmate. By contributing $250,000 to the construction of a music studio within the jail, he gave young prisoners a voice, an outlet, and hoped that they, too, might change their own narratives. In a 2023 interview with CBS Mornings, he stated that he wished to offer these children hope. Saved my life. Perhaps it can also save theirs. He continued to work hard after that. Jelly Roll has also been an outspoken supporter of criminal justice reform, drug treatment, and mental health awareness. He has supported nonprofit re-entry programs, given speeches at rehabilitation facilities, and raised money for addiction-affected families through his social media following. Jelly Roll takes on real-life concerns at a time when many celebrities avoid them. Even his marriage to Bunny so has blossomed into a therapeutic and loving relationship. Together, they have transformed their podcast, Dumb Blonde, into a forum for candid conversations on pain, healing, and redemption, providing listeners with emotional solace in addition to entertainment. Fans of Jelly Roll are survivors, not only admirers. At his concerts, strangers sing along to their own suffering and recovery, making them feel less like performances and more like group therapy sessions. And that might be the core of his influence. He has established a community. People who felt invisible now have a voice because to him. He has demonstrated that your future is not determined by your past. He has reminded us that although atonement is difficult, it is achievable. And Jelly Roll's legacy seems more important than ever as he navigates one of the most trying periods of his life. Because of faith, not because of fear. Faith in the ability of the guy who rose from the bottom to rise again. This time, for himself, not for attention or recognition. Jelly Roll's narrative is not a fairy tale. It's not sanitized. It's a battle-scarred ballad, whether it's polished or predictable. One that is full of poor decisions, heartbreak, courageous retorts, and unfinished words. However, that's what gives it its potency. Because Jelly Roll brings his entire tale with him when he takes the stage. And it serves as a reminder that even our heroes suffer when he leaves the limelight. Sometimes we need to relax, even our loudest voices. And perhaps now more than ever, even the man who gave us hope needs us. This is your chance to support him if his music has ever given you solace, if his lyrics have ever gotten you through a restless night, or if his journey has shown you that recovery is achievable. Love him and help him get better. And use his experience as a reminder if you're going through a difficult time. You're not by yourself. You are important. Furthermore, it's never too late to start over. While we watch, wait, and cheer for the next chapter, please hit the notify button, like this video, and subscribe.